There's a really interesting stat that the Creative Diversity Network did for 2022. So while Muslims are 6.5 of the UK's population, they only represent 2.5 of the TV industry, and that's obviously way less when you think about leadership roles. The portrayal of Muslims, as we've all talked about here, is incredibly important to how we are seen on TV. How do you address that now? Because you have commissioned some brilliant programmes at BBC Three that have addressed it in a really entertaining way, in an informative way, and have taken us into people's lives that are surprising, and they're Muslims. Obviously, I'm talking about the Khans. But how important is that to represent those programmes? And second question, sorry, I'm going to add it in. How hard is it to find indies to do that stuff for you?
So just want to pick up on one point, and you know, we heard it at the McTaggart last night, which is, you know, the industry is overwhelmingly middle class, right? And we know statistically that Muslims are more likely to come from low income backgrounds, therefore working class. So, you know, you can see already there's a massive dichotomy of who's in this industry. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, yes, you know, we're trying all the time, and I talk about it a lot. And to be honest, even the events of the last few weeks haven't really ignited or accelerated those conversations, because I feel like I'm in a privileged place. I can have those conversations already. But yes, it's interesting because when you look at the creative supply base, you know, I very rarely meet development teams where, you know, a head of development who's of colour, let alone an exec who you know, I'm obviously making assumptions, so I wouldn't ask, but might be Muslim or Muslim heritage, right? So that's automatically telling you, you know, the people that are kind of developing ideas, you know, what are their life experiences? Because more often than not, I'm in their world, but are they in my world, right? So you're absolutely right. There's something about our creative supply community, because actually there's been a lot of emphasis on broadcasters and commissioners, and I think we're pretty good at the BBC. I think nearly 5% are now, you know, of Muslim heritage in terms of commissioners at the BBC. I think that's a good stat, right? But I think there is something about the sort of supply chain, like who's generating those ideas and what have their life contact being with Muslims. Because I'm very conscious of the fact that, you know, I often sort of attend probably a Zoom a week where I absolutely know, and I can sort of see it in the sort of body language, that, you know, there might be someone on that Zoom that this is the first time they've seen someone like me actually speak English and talk to them. And you can almost see it, you can just tell from, you know, and I always do the thing, oh, where are you Zooming me from? You know, like, oh, I'm out in the sticks. Like, where are you out in the sticks, you know? So you sort of know this is the first time they're actually having a conversation with somebody who might be visibly Muslim, right? So yeah, I feel like we're already having those conversations, but we need the supply, we need the ideas, right?
It's not just the idea. I feel like it's not just lack of representation from us. It's their unconscious bias as well. So even if they do hear from us, so you can propose an idea about a lollipop lady with hemorrhoids, let's say, just for argument's sake. So you can come and present this idea. This lollipop lady happens to be Muslim, and it just happens that she could be absolutely anything. But because of their unconscious bias, they're like, okay, so is she involved in terrorist activities? No, she's not. Okay. Did she have an arranged marriage? No, she didn't. So it's like, when it gets, because, you know, like I'm a writer, I've got stuff in development, and I used to, because, you know, at the beginning, you need the work. You're like, okay, I'll do whatever. But it's got to a point where as soon as that, they try to sway that narrative into what they think people want to see Muslims being, or what they think Muslims are. And it's like, sometimes you just want to tell them, shut up and listen. And that's what it is. So, like, alhamdulillah, I've got to a point where I can be a bit picky. Like, I'm working with Gina at the moment. Pew, 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 pew. And it's because, like, it's so rare to have someone who just really listens to our experiences as individuals, not as Muslims, but just as individuals. And I think that's where a lot of the problems are, is that they already have preempted ideas of what we are, and that's what needs to be like.
Well, no experience. You know, they may never have met anyone like you. And actually, you know, because of the industry's makeup, we know from the data and McTaggart last night, I'm under no illusion that there are lots of people that probably would never have spoken to a person of colour until they join the workforce, right?
100%,
So,
100%,
so
100%.
whereas I've lived in so many communities, I've lived up and down the UK, worked in so many cities, I'm always in everyone else's world, and I really do think that who's in my world, that's something that I'm very conscious of.
Yeah, and the only way they've ever been in your world is based on what they've already seen on TV. So it's like a vicious circle. They've already preempted what you are based on what you've seen on TV, and what we've seen on TV is misrepresentation of what we are. So it's just like it has to get to a point where we just need you to listen. That's it.
We need to break the cycle, but this is the problem: is when they see one thing work, they want that's the thing they hang on to.
Yeah.
So once we are
So you're basically saying that the one thing that works in terms of portrayal for Muslims are terrorists, honour killings.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No. What I'm saying, well, I mean, for them, that's what worked for a very long time. It wasn't it? It's the only thing they could see. Because it also served their political narratives, but we won't get political. But what I'm saying is, so after We Are Lady Parts, season 1 came out, I will promise you that every single Muslim writer that you speak to will tell you that if they pitched an idea to someone which was so far removed from We Are Lady Parts, the thing that would be mentioned by that production company or that exec or whatever would be either, could it be a wee bit more We Are Lady Parts or We Are Lady Parts? Because
my God,
that's the only thing that they have seen Muslims, and especially visible Muslim women, that has been a success. And I'll be honest, when we went into the season 2 room, we had a very open conversation about this, and Nida is very aware that that's what was happening, and it really frustrates her because the whole point of one show breaking through is going, look, one show's done it, this is one version of it, but imagine all the other shows that could exist. But the problem is, and I hate the word risk, but they see us as a risk because of all the stuff Ola was saying as well. It's they're very comfortable in the versions that they know. And the thing is, before something like We Are Lady Parts was a success, they probably would never have imagined something like that being on screen, or Man Like Mubin and things like that. It's because there has been someone that said, let's give this a go. And then it's been huge, but for some reason they won't repeat that, let's give this a go.
Can I just, because I want to bring some joy into this, and when I talked to you on the phone, the thing that you spoke about so beautifully and eloquently was what it was like working in a writer's room where you were just surrounded by South Asian people or Muslim women. And talk to me about what that felt, because I want people to hear what that feels like when you are working in a safe environment where you can say what you want. I think it's so important for people to understand what it is like when you are working in a room where you can be your true, authentic self.
So the season 1 was an all-Muslim room, mix of genders, mix of ethnicities, but the season 2 room, because we were going to start exploring more sensitive topics, so Nida wanted an all-female room, and so we had an all-female room, different ethnicities, different versions of following the faith, some practicing, some not so practicing, different sects, different sexualities, and most of us didn't know each other when we went into that room on day 1. And one of the producers, John, we never saw him at all that week, because he purposely stayed away because he didn't want to ruin, even by popping in and saying hi, he didn't want to ruin the dynamic. So it was an all-female room. It was like therapy at points. We felt so safe just talking about things we would probably never talk about with other people. I can see it all on the screen. I can see all of our conversations on the screen. I can see the richness that's come to the show because of that. By our final day, we were crying because we had to leave each other. We have a WhatsApp group now where we stay in touch and all of that. But
did you do your best work in that room because of the environment that you were in. And this is a really important point.
Some of it, yeah. I mean, the way that room worked is a development room. So we always knew she was going to write the full kind of season because it's such a short season. But we gave everything of ourselves in that. But I don't think that is just necessarily a room with just people like us that can happen. I've been working with producers both in film and TV and production companies who create that environment. I'm currently developing an adaptation of a book, which Nancy's in the audience. Hi, Nancy. For a company in Glasgow called Freedom Scripted. I have felt so supported, so listened to. When I got into development with Film 4, there was an exec there called Sam Lavender I worked with, and I was a newbie, first feature kind of thing. I'm writing a story about Muslim soldiers in World War I, and every time he gave me a note, he started with, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's so simple. It's so simple. It's someone saying, I have decades of experience in Oscars and all of this, but I recognize that I don't have your lived experience and I want to learn and I want us to work together and I want to put the story on screen.
So Tez, obviously similar worlds in terms of the work that you've done, Man Like Bobine. Do you recognise any of that, just in terms of the lived experience, the listening to you, the kind of bringing in the worlds that you come from into your world when it comes into writing and performance? Can you identify with any of that stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on Man Like Bobine, working with Guz was such a joy, and we were given so much freedom because it was Guz's show. We were given so much freedom to improvise and be ourselves. And Ollie was the director the first 3 seasons, and Jill was the producer, who was brilliant, Jill Howes. And they gave us that freedom to do that because they trusted us. I don't know why, but they just did. And I guess they maybe realised that if they allowed us to be authentic selves, it's going to be a better show. But in my experience, indies are full of wonderful, lovely, supportive people. That's been my experience in developing stuff and in development, and then getting it to the point where a commissioner will inevitably say no. But the 2 times that I have had stuff commissioned, and it was a blap for Channel 4, which was the same year as Lady Pot, so we can guess which one went to commission, and because there's only room for one, and it's like the Highlander, there can be only one, and then the 10 o'clock show, which was also on Channel 4, and the first one was Tanya Qureshi, I think is at BBC now, and the second one was Saida. So the only 2 times I've ever had anything commissioned is when there's people from Muslim backgrounds in those roles.
Can I be the Grinch?
Champions.
Wait a
minute. Carry on.
So any other times where, so unfortunately, so how those pilots made, so the pilot for the Blap Channel 4 Blap Bounty, and then the 10 o'clock show pilots, and then when it came to like the decisions being made whether or not they should go to full series, Saida moved on, Tanya moved on, and so the decision making then went to someone else who didn't quite get it, and it was like, yeah, but it doesn't matter if you don't get it. And it seems to me like commissioners are still stuck in commissioning things in their own image. And I think that's the need to almost take their ego out of it and take their own taste out of it. And I feel like that's not happening yet. Because the amount of stuff that gets to TV that flops because it's commissioners and execs who come up here to the Fringe Festival, see stuff here that they love, that works at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, but doesn't have any commercial appeal. Because the Fringe is a thing in of itself. It's not a commercial festival. It's a festival of people who love who love comedy, and who love a certain type of comedy in the main.
And can I just say that is the same for factual, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like, even though it's a similar medium, like, you know, so much of the storytelling, of course, about Muslims has been in proximity to violence. And I think I've gone on my own journey. I do a lot of true crime storytelling, and so having a sit down with some people, I do a lot covering cases where, you know, women have been killed by men, and every now and then a case that just so happens to involve a brown woman may come up, and I don't say to myself, I'm not going to give her the respect of telling that story. I will try and tackle it. But I had a conversation with an exec where I said, to be perfectly honest, we should just be telling this story within the context of violence against women and girls, like what we've called honour violence, you know, somebody's movements being controlled or how they dress or something, that's coercive control. Like, we know how to define that as a crime. Like, let me tell the story let's make it about the misogyny and the violence against women and girls, not about religion. You know, those slight tonal changes can make a huge difference where we're still not, you know, saying let's never ever talk about issues. We need to, that's our role in making a healthy democracy. But them small, slight changes where the focus is not on the colour of the skin or the religion can make a huge difference.